Started. Like I said, my name's Fraser Gow, Head of Customer Service at CHU. I'll be your host today. I'm really confident that today's update will be both insightful and valuable, hopefully offering a clear view of where the market's headed and how CHU is positioned to support you. If you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat. Our CFO, James Macon, is standing by to respond. And if time allows, I'm sure Kim will be happy to answer a few of them at the end as well. Next week's certificates of attendance will be emailed out with CPD points, and a recording will also be made available. But before we dive in, I'd like to officially welcome you to country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, CHU acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we live, work throughout Australia, and their continuing connection to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Kimberly Johnson. As one of Australia's leading strata insurance specialists, Kimberly Johnson is the CEO of CHU Underwriting Agencies. Kimberly joined the insurance industry in South Australia in 2005 and has worked across multiple jurisdictions in various underwriting, sales, and management roles. She brings a wealth of experience and a deep knowledge of the strata industry and community. In addition, Kimberly is a fellow board member of ANZIIF, a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, and holds an MBA from AIM Business School. Kim, before I hand it over to you, a lot's happened since the last state of the market. I imagine it's been quite a busy time for you. How's it all gone?
A few things on, Fraser.
Thanks for coming in, Kim, by the way.
No, it's been a really interesting time for Strata Insurance. I noticed Insurance News magazine did an article a few weeks ago that was "Don't Hate Me, I Work in Insurance," and the last few months have been a bit like "Don't hate me, I work in Strata Insurance." And I do kind of want to touch on that a little bit today because we have a lot of people doing some really good work for our clients all through the Strata Insurance chain, whether it's brokers, whether it's strata managers. So we really want to remind people that we understand what you do, understand your role, and respect that role, and there's been no change there. So I might go back to actually some old slides from 2022 just to do a bit of remembering. I'll also touch on just what's happening with premium, some of the challenges that we see going forward, and just what CHU's got going on as well. All right. Now these things haven't changed, but it's always a good reminder. 1.3 trillion in assets under management in this country in strata. 356,788 strata schemes. 3 million lots. Half of them are built in the last 25 years. So we've got a lot of aging stock, but we've also got some interesting issues with the new stock as well. And yeah, we have 10 million Australian households, and 1.3 million of those are strata title households. And so when we look at these numbers, it's no wonder that we kind of end up in the media. There's a lot of people affected by strata, and for a really long time we haven't had a lot of engagement from unit owners with their own strata schemes, and that's always presented challenges. And so whilst it hasn't been great to see the strata insurance industry demonized in the media, or strata management demonized in the media, I think the opportunity is that we've got unit owners engaged, and some of them it will be for the first time, and that can only be a good thing. Like, if people are interested in their building, they're interested in their insurance, like that actually solves a lot of issues that we've been working on over a period of time. And so whilst it has created a lot of noise, I think there's a genuine opportunity to be taken here to educate people who are suddenly listening.
Kim, I hope
But
you don't mind me interjecting and asking you a couple of questions along the way. I hope that's okay.
no, I'd like it to be conversational, Fraser.
Good, good, good. 356,000 schemes in Australia. That's a lot. It's a big number of schemes. And I've read that Australian Insights report, and unfortunately they don't have the data about how many of those are managed and how many of those are self-managed. But we can probably assume that the majority of that number are managed by a strata manager. Now, there's been a lot of discussion around strata managers in the last 12 months and their role in the placement of insurance. What's been the thinking around that specifically?
So it's not just the last 12 months. We have been talking about this for years. I have been talking about it for a decade. We did a lot of work, and when I say we, CHU's done work, but also the University of New South Wales commissioned a report into strata insurance practices, and they kind of looked at, well, what's a strata manager's role? Like, why are strata managers so inextricably entwined in the insurance? And I wanted to, some people will have seen these slides, but I wanted to go back to them because they're from 2021 and they're as pertinent today as they were then. And I don't want anyone to forget what goes on. So there were all these items, 13 items that it was found that strata managers were involved in both the placement of insurance policies and also insurance claims. And I wanted to touch on claims in particular. So when we're discussing commission, right? And I think that the commission discussion in New South Wales is probably welcome in that we've been having this discussion for such a long time. You know, maybe it is time to have some kind of a transition. But the question is, do strata managers deserve to be remunerated for the work they do in insurance? They absolutely do. And there's no strata manager who does no work for insurance. So I wanted to reiterate that. And again, these slides I showed from 2021 were some of the good managers who had worked on some significant claims for CHU at that time. And then I did some maths and I called it at that time Kim Maths. It's because it's my best guess. So when we had the 2022 floods in Lismore in southeast Queensland and those storms, we affectionately know that as Cat 221. You'll remember that CHU had our biggest number of claims that ever came in from a single event. And we extrapolated that across the industry, and we thought that strata managers probably lodged out of that one event around 6,000 claims, and that was conservative because we don't know how many self-managed blocks there are in addition or blocks that we don't touch. So we're extrapolating. But yeah, from one event, I estimate a minimum of 6,000 claims were lodged by managers. And that's on top of the probably 60,000 claims a year that also get lodged by managers. And just about every strata insurance claim starts and originates in a strata manager's office. They're very important in the communication of the claim. In terms of communicating with owners. So as soon as you have common property touched or you have multiple lots affected by a claim, we need the managers there. And so from my perspective, we can't have strata managers stop doing what they're doing. We need them to keep going. And as a result, we can't extract it from the strata management role. And so if we can't do that, we need them to keep doing what they're doing. They need to get paid. Now, whether that is under the current arrangement of commission or whether that's under a different arrangement of fees, I think we just need to make sure that we keep strata management businesses in this country profitable. And I just had some little reminders, and again, this is back from 22, and it was, so I know we've got a lot of brokers on this call. Brokers are quite good at selling what they do and their role. Strata managers by nature, I have found over my 20 years at CHU to not really be salespeople. They more see themselves as administrators. But it's really important that you can proudly say what your role is. So make sure we're actively engaged with committees and tell them what you do. It's that cultural thing. Again, brokers are good at this. This is what we're here for. Thanks for ringing. Really encourage pride. So when insurance discussions can go off the rails is when a strata manager doesn't feel comfortable in talking about what they do in their role for insurance and why they get paid. People should really be very proud. And if we do think back to that last big catastrophe, there should be extreme pride in the help that managers provided in the rebuilding process. Claims take longer if you don't have a manager involved. Like, we get people back in their homes quicker. So please ensure that your teams feel proud of their role in the insurance process and the rebuilding process. We know that there's a lot of emails, we know there's a lot of phone calls, but there's always room for an empathetic and sympathetic ear when people are going through a crisis. And water damage in someone's home probably isn't the biggest crisis that you're dealing with as a manager, but it's the biggest thing that's going on in their life, and it's always good to remember that. This is fundamentally important at the moment. Understand how much time you are spending on insurance, on claims, because that is going to become very important as we have that commission discussion and the remuneration discussion. Whatever way this comes out, you need to know what it would cost you. So it's very, very important. And it will take some time. It will cost to do the analysis, but for me, it's absolutely worth it if you can make sure and demonstrate what would be lost from your business if this went away. And a big one for me is have good claims stories. Everyone in our offices has dealt with a claim that has affected them, and it's really good to be able to have those case studies on hand to say, well, nothing might have happened to you or your building yet, but what we can say is 1 in 4 buildings has a claim every year. There's a level of frequency of major loss. It could be you. And these are stories and these are claims that I've helped manage and that our business has helped manage. And this is what we do for you when something happens. So that I'll kind of leave that stuff there, but I just wanted to do a quick reminder, and all of those old slides are available if anyone wants to have a look at them. Fraser, do you want to take any questions?
Yeah, I will. I'll if there are any questions that I feel like the whole group would like the answer to, I might ask those as we go,
Yep.
or at the end if we have any time at the end as well. But yeah, I'll keep rudely interjecting if that's
Yeah, okay. I think the other thing that I just wanted to address, which we can't do a state of the market without addressing, is there was some discussion around CHU's market share. And that has sort of come out of our discussion with fair trading. It was kind of mentioned in some articles. And so I wanted to have a look at that because it's not necessarily, what has been said isn't necessarily reflective. And so I just wanted to show some facts. This is from the Steadfast AGM. So there's been a lot of discussion about Steadfast concentration in Strata beyond just CHU. So I wanted to have a look at the agencies. So when we look at it by policy count, so we were talking about 356,000 Strata schemes in Australia. CHU are writing about 4.7% of them. So people think we've got half, they think we've got 70%. We do have a significant proportion of the premium because we're weighted towards larger buildings. But in terms of number of schemes, we're writing about 25%, just under 25%. And then if you want to look at the Steadfast concentration through their equity agencies, you can see that 70% of the market exists outside of Steadfast. And so there's no indication there. Like when I look at that, I don't think that there's a competition issue. We have been around the longest. We do try and be the market leader. We do try and do things the best. And I like to think that's why we're having a significant market share. But certainly it's not half.
That makes a lot of sense, Kim. I'd always thought that we had 50% of the market, but obviously the total volume of schemes is weighted towards a smaller size, whereas we would probably retain a bigger portion of those larger schemes that would cause us to have a bigger percentage of the market by GWP. Is that that's what you're saying there?
Yeah, and so Steadfast also showed this at their AGM as well. And so there was discussion about, will Steadfast brokers then place a lot of business? So the Steadfast brokers are placing only about 14% of the Strata insurance market. So the agencies, some of that business will be placed through Steadfast agencies, but I can certainly guarantee that there's been no direction for the Steadfast brokers to use us. And if I look at Austbrokers, if I look at Gallagher as a group, if I look at Marsh as a group, in terms of new business quotes and strike rate, I can say that with those other broker groups, the Adviso group, we're actually performing better in terms of new business quote, strike rate and renewal retention with those groups than we are with Steadfast group brokers. So I really do feel like they hold us to account. And despite the fact that it's uncomfortable, I did just want to have that discussion because there's some real non-facts out there, and I wanted to address that. I might just have a look and see if there's any questions about that specifically. No, I'll wait for you, Fraser. Whoa, here we go. So this is where we are. So we talked about the market size. So this is us. So we've got about 110,000 policies in force. Our underwriting team has 72 people, and we've got about 77 in claims. We do 187,000 new business quotes a year. So yeah, to September 24, we did 187,000 quotes. 60,000 of them were done by Flex Insurance for very low strike rates. And so one of the other things I've heard is this, it's kind of almost an accusation that only one quote was sought, and it was from CHU. Now, I've got to tell you, I said this last week to a few people as well. I feel quite offended when people say we only got one quote, because we break our backs to do those 187,000 quotes. We really do. And we know that there's a 3-quote rule in New South Wales. We know that there's major spend rules in Queensland which require multiple quotes, and it's practice in other places. And we also know that we hold a significant proportion of the market, so about 25% of stratas are insured with us. We do it as a service. So these quotes that we are giving, that we know we don't have a great chance of winning, we're doing because we know people need a quote. And we really put a lot of effort in. So 187,000 quotes, 72 people. There's also a huge investment in technology that we've made into Strata Tech to make sure we can efficiently do those quotes and get them in on time, quote commercial stratas efficiently, quote buildings with defects efficiently, and put a quote in every single time. So why did I only get one quote? Because CHU bothered. They were the ones who bothered to give you a quote. And I feel very passionately about that because I know Renee Reary's team in underwriting, Steve Cheapak's team in the National Specialty Risk work incredibly hard. The Flex team are working 6 days a week at the moment, all of them, to put their quotes out in a timely manner. So it's very important to me that if someone only gets one quote, instead of saying, why did you only give us one quote? They say, why didn't those other parties put a quote in? And they start asking those questions and they start requiring a declinature if there's not going to be a quote.
Kimberly,
Okay.
187,000 new business quotes seems insane to me for a team of 72 underwriters. How has that number, where's that number come from? What's it increased from, and how has CHU gotten to that point where we're able to deliver that many quotes?
So I think what you'll find is about 40% of our transactions go direct through API. So Strata, for anyone listening who isn't connected to Strata or isn't using Strata, we integrate with other systems. So we've got about 40% of transactions going through integrated systems. We have about 70% of new business quotes can go straight through. So if you data enter it into Strata, you should get a same day quote. The other thing we're doing is we're trying really hard to maintain a fast turnaround on anything that does refer. So Strata self-serve is certainly the quickest way and the most efficient way for a broker or a strata manager to get a quote from CHU, from Flex. You can get both quotes. But yeah, certainly there's a huge investment that we've made in Strata over years. And then also with our Manila team, so big investment there to make sure that we're training people. We've got enough people with enough authority to keep turning things around. And it's a constant battle for the underwriters to maintain their service levels. And so I genuinely, and it's not just because I was an underwriter, Fraser, I genuinely respect the work that our underwriters do in making sure that they get things out and that they put a number on everything, because we know that people need our quote.
Thanks, Kimberly. If it's okay, I'd like to pass on a question from the audience at this point, from Paul Forbes. What's CHU's position on writing new business in North Queensland?
So we have expanded our appetite in North Queensland. So we have been now for probably around 6 months, been putting quotes into the market. We don't quote everything. So we're not quoting buildings, for example, pre-1985. We are limiting the sum insured that we're writing up to. So we won't write a building in North Queensland as large as we would write in Sydney, for example, but certainly our appetite has expanded. And you should, if you do have buildings in FNQ, you should try us. We won't write anything, but certainly the appetite is much broader up north than it was 12 months ago or at any other point in my tenure at CHU. Got any more?
I'll let you know as we go, Kim.
Yeah, I can see there's a lot of activity. Okay, next. So I thought I'll have a look at the premium trends. We always do this with the state of the market. So we'll get back to standard things that you see from us and we can see how things are going. I went too fast. Okay, so this slide we have been showing pretty much since COVID. So what we're looking at here, so we've got 3 lines. We've got an orange line, we've got a green line, and we've got a blue line. The blue line is CPI. This is ABS data, by the way. The green line is CHU's sum insured change, so the change in asset value. You can see that they're driving pretty closely together. What the orange line is the house construction inputs to CPI. So that's things like the cost of materials, cost of wood, cost of tiles. And what we're seeing is we're still seeing that outstrip CPI. It is coming back closer. But what that tells us is when your construction inputs are that far above the sum insured change, what we need to be seeing is more valuations. So we're still, and we can see that sums insured have increased. We've really been educating and trying to push valuations because we know that there's been this disparity for 3 years. But certainly we need to be recommending to every building to be getting a valuation, especially if they have not had one in the last 3 years. Their sum insured could be majorly off track. So just doing indexation in the last 3 years would not have been enough. So we need to get valuations, and please be encouraging clients to get valuations. The next slide that I have is a insurance industry slide. So this is Australian General Insurance. From the source is the Insurance Council of Australia. What we're looking at here with purple bars is the premium over time. And you can see that premiums in 2022 to 23 in particular did increase significantly. Now, the reason we show this is you can see those little green bars at the bottom. That's the insurance industry profit. So we can see that whilst premiums have increased, this graph tells us that losses have also increased in line. So we've seen claims inflation outstripping premium inflation, which is another way we could have shown this. So premiums have increased, but there's nothing here that indicates price gouging. The margins, you can see there have been losses in some years as an industry, not just individual companies. Individual company performance will be quite different than this. And then if you split it off into just home insurance, it's a different story again. But at an industry-wide level, that tells me in one very simple graph that there's no evidence of insurer price gouging at all.
Tim, we've got a couple of questions from the audience. How many quotes does CHU issue to strata managers rather than brokers? And are strata managers qualified to give advice?
Very good. So first thing, I can't tell you how many new business quotes we give direct to strata managers, but I can tell you about 14% of our portfolio is placed via strata managers as an authorised rep of CHU. So if we were just going to do a direct extrapolation, I would say 14% of those quotes. Yeah, the majority of this business is broker business now. So yeah, over 80% is broked. You will still have a strata manager in that distribution chain, as we know, for many buildings. But yeah, the broker distribution is how this business is placed these days, and the AR model, those policy numbers shrink every year. Strata managers. Now, I'll answer this question in the context of a CHU authorised rep. Okay, so every strata manager under every different agreement that they might have with an underwriting agency or a broker will be different. But so our model is a authorised rep model. We have our authorised reps as RG 146 compliant. They are authorised to give general advice and factual information. They are not authorised to give personal advice. So that's, we say things like, and we did an AR webinar last week, Fraser, I don't know if you got to be on it, but we say we, us, and our. So we recommend CHU to many of our clients because we've found them to be good with claims. That's a general advice statement. They give general advice warnings. You'll see in the minutes of the meeting a general advice warning. You'll see in the management agreement a general advice authority. When you get to bigger schemes, I think we do start to be needing personal advice, and that's what brokers can give. So a broker can say, I've taken into account your circumstances, body corporate, and we think you need this policy, we think you need these covers. And so the advices are different, but under the CHU authorised rep model, there is a general advice authority.
Thank you, Kim. Well answered.
Did I answer that whole question?
You did.
It was a
And
multi-part question.
One more audience question before we move on. And it's relating specifically to the issue of underinsurance in the market at the moment. But the question is, we are seeing in some instances, we are seeing valuations come back after 2 or 3 years as having little to no increase, or in a few instances, the value was proposed to be decreased. Should we be skeptical of decreases considering the building cost inputs?
I would be asking questions. If you have this signed off by a licensed valuer, you know, there's not much more than you can do by that. But I would certainly be asking what factors in that sum insured have decreased, because that's not representative of where we've seen sums insured going, or where we've seen the house construction inputs to CPI going. So on an individual building basis, it's possible for that to happen, that someone's been overinsured, but I can't foresee that there would be a major overinsurance issue in any state or territory of Australia, given where we've been on the CPI and construction price index journey.
Thanks, Kim. I did promise we could move on after this, but there are just a lot of good questions coming
Yeah,
through.
no, I'm really happy to take questions. Like, that's why I like doing these webinars live instead of a recording, where I could be a bit more polished, is I do like to answer questions as they come up.
One of them relates to your slide on what the Strata Manager does and how to promote that. But the question is, can you shed some light on where committee members requesting for justification on insurance brokerage and Strata Manager's fee being a double up? How would you answer that?
I don't know if I quite understand the question, but so what we have is Strata Insurance, as we've had this shift to broker since 2015, we're essentially had a double intermediation of the product. So we had Strata managers who were used to receiving, you know, up to 20% commission. And then we had brokers who, under their normal model, is a commission model as well. And so then what we had is a fee plus commission model, which is explored widely in John Trowbridge's phase 1 and phase 2 reports. And so what we saw was the fees and commission could be totaling 40%. And so what you've got is that people started asking questions about that, and that kind of is what was raised in the ABC and in some articles. I'm not sure. I don't know what the right number is, but I know that the Strata managers have an important role. And I know that in 2024, they can't do it without a broker, really, in most cases. You need to have a broker. You've got more complicated buildings. You've got more buildings with defects. I'll show you later how many buildings we've got with combustible cladding as well. The buildings have become more complex. The buildings have become bigger. So I do believe that the double intermediation is warranted. I do believe the cost to distribute this product and run this product is more than 20%, but I don't know if it's 40. And certainly what we've seen some fairly egregious examples of that being even more distribution cost than 40%. And so the conversation that we should be having is, what's the right number? But really, I think the biggest thing when we're talking to committees, and I'm really sorry if I'm not answering this question as it was asked, we need to be educating committees that Strata insurance is not home insurance. It is much more complex. The claims are much more complex. And you also have a limited market compared to the home insurance market as well. So it does cost more to manage it. but we need to educate them. We need to be transparent, and we need to absolutely go out of our way to show everyone who's getting paid, how much, and where it's going, what it comes out of. Is it on top of the premium, or is it from within the premium? So certainly, I'm not here to say 20% is the maximum. I'm not here to say even that commission as a system must be retained, but brokers need to get paid and the manager needs to get paid, and we can't take either of them out of the ecosystem, in my opinion, in the current environment. And I'll show you some examples later. Carry on.
Carry on. Thank you, Kim. Well answered. Next,
What's happening with rates? So I've gone away from that slide of showing where rates have been. It's kind of too historical. What I want to show is a nicer story about where rates are going. So this is CHU. What we have is a situation where we went through a period of really needing to increase rate. And it was basically, like, in very simple terms, the insurance portfolio that we had wasn't paying for itself. And that is an untenable situation. We have gone through a process over a period of years, and quite honestly, hand on heart, I would like to thank every intermediary, manager or broker who has had a difficult premium discussion on our behalf. I know it's been a really challenging period and we were pushing a lot of rate. Where we have got to is a point where our portfolio we've done the work that we need to do, and now where we are is in maintenance mode. And so what we're trying to do is keep the policies around the right price. We're not just pushing rate. We're trying to stick the price at the level it needs to be to pay for the whole policy. And so what that means is actually some good news for a lot of our clients. So if we look at from November, so we're in November now, these changes have gone through for November policies through to February. If we look at that period, we have 21% of policies that are actually going to go backwards, Fraser. They're not going to go back 20%, but 21% of the policies will be cheaper than last year. 38% of policies are going to roll over at last year's rate. That for me is an unbelievable result, because all we're trying to do is we're not trying to get more for a policy than we need. We're just needing those policies to pay for themselves. And if the rate can go backwards because we've done a pricing review, which we have, we're doing that. So this isn't aggressive discounting. This is just keeping the price accurate. And so what that results in over the whole portfolio is an average rate change of about 6% across Australia. It's going to vary from state to state, but the average is 6% between November and February. It's much more moderate than if we looked at this time last year. That 6 was probably 22 on average. There would have been nothing going backwards, not very much rolling over. So it's a really a much improved rate environment from where we've been. And I would be asking, I know that CHU isn't always the cheapest. We do try and be the best. We do try and give the best claims service. We do try and put a quote in on every building. And what I would ask is that you give us your recommendation, even if we're a little bit more expensive, because we really, we're here for the long run. We've got our now 10-year binder, effective from April 2025. That's an amazingly secure situation for the Australian strata market, and I'm very, very proud of that as a result. And it's being smart with price that gives us that edge and the ability to get such a long agreement.
I remember seeing that house construction inputs graph last year, Kim. I was really hoping it would kind of fall back down to the norm, but yeah, it hasn't really, has it? It's continuing to expand. Do you think that that'll have an effect on future premiums?
So what we're experiencing, and the data hasn't fully developed yet, but what we're experiencing is we are actually seeing that gap close. So it's kind of dipping down now. So if you imagine, go back to the orange line and the green line, they're coming closer together again. But once again, you need to see that kind of develop. And so the numbers that we've given are very factual. And so the others are kind of more of a prediction of what we see coming. But certainly that number does appear to be coming down. Market challenges. So now some people would have attended the affordability webinar, but I want to keep coming back to this. Whilst Strata insurance has become more expensive, it is still much more affordable than home insurance. It's more available than home insurance. So if we look, Australians are paying in Strata an average of $954 per lot per year, including tax for residential Strata insurance. It is still a very cost-effective way to be buying insurance. Strata, the premiums have increased, it's not broken. We can see that in every capital city across Australia, the median price per lot is, below $1,000. Once again, this is based on our data. Now, if we look at home insurance affordability, now we're only looking at local government areas where Strata exists. Oh, my computer's doing something funny. Have I still got you, Fraser?
Still got you, Kim.
Am I still sharing?
Yep.
Excellent. So when we look at the local government areas and the insurance affordability and the median price per local government area, what we can see is if we look at it Strata versus home, the story is very different, and you wouldn't be having an affordability discussion about Strata insurance in the same way that we're having an affordability discussion about home. Now, the ICA do not separate out, APRA don't separate out, I don't believe in their data, Strata. And so it gets wound into home insurance. And because the average Strata premium in terms of per policy, not per owner, will be high because they're bigger buildings, bigger sums insured. People see these big bills and they think it's unaffordable. It's very psychological for people, those big numbers. And we know insurance is one of the biggest bills that any body corporate pays every year. But if we simply compared it and said, if you were living in a freestanding home in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Brisbane, or in Cairns, Strata insurance is more affordable. And so if we just put it very simply, I don't know who we've got most of on the call, but even if we look at somewhere like the Gold Coast, we look at affordability as how many weeks of someone's income in that area does it cost for them to pay their insurance. So Strata, 0.8 weeks on the Gold Coast. It's 1.6 weeks if it was a home. Overall, if we look at Perth, 0.6 weeks, 0.9 weeks for a home. So the affordability level is there. But certainly we do accept and we do understand that premiums have gone up over the last 5 years. I think the number is about 80% over the last 5 years, but that is because this has been a historically underpriced product and we are having increased natural perils. And I'll show that next. The cost of extreme weather. So if we just look at the last 5 years, you can kind of see that the cost of weather events has really increased. And we look at it by event. We had that little earthquake in Melbourne, those bushfires. And again, this is industry data. So this is from the ICA. This isn't CHU data. Storm Hail's very big for us. If this was just a strata model, that purple would be the biggest, the biggest number. A lot in flooding and not so much in cyclone. So it's very easy to forget, because we've had such lovely weather over the last couple of years, that the last decade has kind of been a bit diabolical in terms of weather events. And so the premiums have had to increase simply to pay for these perils, which we're seeing: increased severity, increased frequency. Today in Sydney, I've got blue skies. Long may they continue. It's good for everyone.
Kim, in the last 5 years, I can see that the cost of extreme weather and catastrophes has been quite high. But luckily, over the last 12 months, especially the last catastrophe season, we did have a quieter season. Did that have a positive effect on claim volumes and the claims team's productivity over the last 12 months?
It certainly did, Fraser. Today, we have an all-time low number of open claim files, and that is a direct result of having 2 low catastrophe seasons. So your cat season will typically be, I think, October through to April. The last 2 have been fairly nice, and even with Cyclone Jasper, it didn't end up being a very significant event. I think we had something like 30 claims out of that at CHU. So we are carrying a permanent cat team at CHU. We are making sure that we're ready for the next cat. Our people are trained for the next cat because we know one will happen. But certainly that focus has been on closing more claims than we open every month. And if we do that, we keep driving claim numbers down. So I think today we've got about 8,000 open files, or just under 8,000. And I can't think of a time when that number has been so low. So congratulations, claims team.
Are you madly touching wood on your desk at the moment, Kim?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Next, I know we've talked ad nauseum about the cyclone pool, but I will take any opportunity that I can to say that the cyclone pool, in terms of premium, has taken $45 million out of customer premiums, $45 million in savings just from CHU customers. That's Northern Territory, North Queensland, it's Southeast Queensland to Northern New South Wales, and Northern WA. So those customers have genuinely seen the benefits of the pool in terms of that reduced premium. And the reason is because the cyclone pool premium is working to a much lower catastrophe number. So maybe they're working on a cyclone in Cairns, whereas we're working on a cyclone in Brisbane, you know. So they don't have the cost of capital either. So that's to say they're not holding cash liquid ready to pay billions in insurance claims, which certainly an APRA regulated insurer would be required to do, or reinsurer. So there's lots of reasons that they're able to be cheaper, but it's good. It's been good for customers. We haven't really tested the pool in terms of claims or its effectiveness. We know that the flooding in Cairns after Jasper was more than 48 hours after the event, so that wouldn't have been included in the pool. But as it was, it wasn't really a big enough test to say it worked or didn't work. But is it working to reduce premiums for customers? It's working $45 million for our clients.
Kim, I just thought I'd let you know you only have 10 minutes to go. I know you've got a couple of slides left.
Slides have I got left? I've got a few.
I'm probably asking a few too many questions, but
there's a lot of questions there. I'll go through this. When we talk about market challenges, defects and combustible cladding have been the probably bigger challenge of this market over the last kind of 8 years. And what we're seeing, the prevalence of defects and cladding varies from state to state. 3% of policies have some form of combustible cladding. and 4% of buildings have known defects. Now we are, and I will plug a future webinar, we're doing an updated defects webinar. And the reason we're doing that is because there's starting to be some confusion between what is a building defect and what is maintenance. So for example, we're being presented maintenance, which it used to be, look how good we are, we're maintaining our building. And now maintenance items that are being done are being presented as building defects. If you're fixing it, it's not a defect, it's maintenance. If the building roof is reaching the end of its life and the committee has raised money to replace that roof, you should be singing that from the rooftops, not saying, oh, sorry, we're replacing the roof. The real defects and the ones that we're really concerned about are those ones where there's potentially litigation with developers, where who's going to pay becomes the question, and when is this going to get fixed becomes the question. But routine maintenance and end of life changes to a building are viewed positively by underwriters, not negatively, and that is the light in which they should be presented. And so we're going to do another defects webinar just to update some of that messaging. This state of the strata market, so some of this information plus more will be available in our ebook in the next couple of weeks. We're just proofreading, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, all of that stuff at the moment, but that will be available very, very soon. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to remind of a few advancements that are coming any day now in Strata Tech. So the first one we call Smart Quote. So we've got 45 years worth of data about these buildings now. What we are doing is we're locking down the fields that we know the answer to. So you will now be able to get a quote simply from putting in a strata plan number or an address. All the building information will then pre-fill for you. That then maintains the data integrity as well. Very excited about this. This has been a long project because we have not purchased data. We have used the data that we have from proposal forms and over time to fill this.
Kim, if I can just ask you a question, ask you a question from myself. I think one of the biggest decisions that CHU's made in the tech space is to employ our own dev team and create our own bespoke tech platforms that no one else has. What impact do you think that that's had on our ability to stay at the forefront of delivering solutions to customers?
We would not be able to do 187,000 new business quotes with the strike rate that we have, which is sub 10%, without extreme efficiency. And so we try and be efficient with people. We try, but the systems are the way. Systems are the way to do it. That is the future. And we're always looking at how can we improve? How can we reduce the referral rate? How can we increase the authority limits? How can we train underwriters to be able to do more themselves so they're not needing sign-off? So efficiency is the key, and Strata Tech is the key to us being efficient. Very happy. Now, we are bringing forward our dashboard, which again should be in place by the end of this year. So intermediaries will be able to see how many policies they have outstanding, how many quotes they've got open, how many they've bound. You'll also be able to find your servicing team there. So who's looking after you from claims, from underwriting. You'll be able to click through into policies, and then you'll also have the claim dashboard as well. What will be coming after that is the bulk lodgement of claims. That won't be in the first iteration. And just a reminder that you can view your up-to-date claim data in real time with Strata Tech as well. So if anyone doesn't use Strata Tech, please start, because the people who use it love it. Now, I thought that was the end of my slideshow. Have you snuck these in, Fraser?
I don't know what you're talking about, Kimberly.
Commitment to ESG. This is really important. So big companies, so the insurers, the ASX companies are really worried about ESG. We know firsthand what's happening with climate. And we do have the ability to affect some things like the 200 million that we spend a year on panel builders. And so we do have a responsibility to follow through on the ICA's roadmap. And I can see that you've got that in there, Fraser. Did you want to talk to it and where we're going?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Kim. If you just, yeah, this slide is a great indication visually about what the path is that we're trying to follow. And we've got a 1, 2, 10, 20, and a 2050 goal. It's broken down into 3 things. It's the emissions that we basically give off as an insurer, our primary things that we do. The ICA has recommended in blue a net zero target of 2030. I can proudly say that we are net zero already and have been for 5 years. What we're looking to in future and moving forward down the line is to make sure that our claims supply chain is net carbon neutral as well. It's a very big undertaking, and the ICA knows as such. There's a 2050 goal in place that they recommend that we be net neutral by. And I'd say based on our strategies that we have in place, we've been net zero by 2040. The last thing that we focus on is the sustainability of our underwriting portfolio, and that's about encouragement for green businesses. It's disencouragement, I suppose, for environmentally negative businesses to be covered under our portfolio. How we determine what the metrics are for that and how we achieve them is going to be really important over kind of the next sort of 10 years. So we're currently under Pillar 3 determining what those methodologies will be. Once again, ICA recommend that we have that under control in full by 2050, and we'll hopefully be far before that. Does that answer that question, Kim?
Yeah, thank you. And then I can see the next slide that's coming up, and I would congratulate you because I know you've done a lot of work on our sustainability charter. And so that ANZIIF award, it really means a lot to us, but certainly you and the whole green team have been so passionate about ESG and CHU and our role and how we can lead the industry despite being a relatively small player. Yeah, congratulations. It was really good.
Thanks, Kim. There are a lot of audience questions. Who is that very handsome man in the photo? I can proudly say that that's the head of customer service at CHU Underwriting. So yeah, very, very handsome. All of the comments about that, Kim.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. I saw there's just so many questions. I saw there's like 44 in there. Do we want to go through some? I know we're very, very close to the end, but I'm happy to go over a little bit just to answer questions.
I think that the questions that we haven't answered yet, Kim, we might respond to any by email. There are some really, really good questions in there, none that I think we have time for right now, but please rest assured that if we haven't answered your questions, we will get back to you with an answer with those questions.
I can see James Macon's been fervently in the chat, typing and typing and typing.
He's been doing a great job. Thank you, James. Just also a reminder that the recording for this will be emailed out along with the attendance certificates.
Yeah. Okay. And will we answer the questions in that mail out?
In the group, yeah, we can answer some of the questions probably in the mail out. Otherwise, we'll go to the question askers individually.
Lovely.
Well, Kimberly, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. I've sat through a few of your presentations, and I learn more and more every time I listen to you speak. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, and also to our audience members. I really appreciate you, all 740 of you spending the last hour with us. You're all very, very important to us, and I hope that we've been able to shed some light over the state of the market at the moment and the direction in which we're headed. So once again, thank you on behalf of CHU.
Thank you all. Thanks, Fraser.
Bye.